artsy stuff, so it will be philosophical debates, it will be nerdy as fuck, and it might be fun, so bear with me. Today I'm talking about the games language, and this is an important thing a lot of people forget when we're talking about games languages. We'll try to make a product, we'll try to find publishing, we'll try to make it better, and like when we're talking about games language, we'll talk about best practices or how to do a particular genre. And I wanted to give a general talk about how we can utilize the unique language games have and how it can help you in development. So, we will start from defining the terminology because, again, I will be using terms as language. And first of all, you can all have different associations. For example, all of you know more languages than English, and some of you are programmers, which means that you already have several definitions of what language means, and none of them are what I'm talking about today. So, let's start with this. So, to start with art, there are a lot of discussions, especially within the community, like if games are art or products and how we look at them. Truth is, games are both, which means that you can say that your game is a product and you can say that your game is a work of art. It depends on the goal you have when you look at the game. Today we will be looking at games through this lens of games being art, trying to understand how it actually works. So if we try to define what art is, we can say that it's an expression in any given form, and we can say that whenever a human being interacts with this expression, we get experience. Like some of you probably had an experience when you are at the museum, you look at a painting or photo art, and you're like, oh shit, that's painful, for example, or touching, or whatever. Like you can have these when you watch Bergman for the first time. You can have these when you're going to the theater. You can have this when you play games. All of us have games we play, which changed us a lot. So whenever we interact with art in any form, we gain experience, and we can say that there are lots of forms of art. Again, we can have paintings, photography, theater, cinema, games, sculpture, cross-disciplinary stuff, performance art, you name it. Which means that there is something in common between all these things, and there are some crafts we use to create the works of art. So if we talk, wait a second, here, if we talk about crafts, these are basically sets of knowledge. Like, if you know how to do nice perspective and lighting on your photos, you can be a decent photographer. It doesn't mean that you are actually an artist, but it means that you will do photographies which are like to an Instagram for sure. If you know how to paint, it might be easier for you to paint something. If you know how to direct films, it might be easier for you to direct films. Which means that there are crafts, and they can be similar and different at the same time for different mediums of art. Like, for example, again, we have perspective and lighting in games, in cinema, in photography, in paintings. We can have text in narratives of games. We can have text as a text of a play. We can have text in any form of literature you can imagine. And we can notice that this text, for example, will be working differently, or perspective will be working differently in different mediums. So we can say that crafts are hard skills you can gain to actually do something. They do not define if you can create art or not. They can help you. And if you are perceiving yourself as an artist, trying to make an expression, because we already told that the work of art is an expression itself, then your goal is to balance out the crafts you have. How you do that, you need a starting point, you need something you balance this for. Like whenever, for example, you balance the game, right, you need some metrics, you need some numbers, you need some experience you want to achieve. Otherwise, you're just playing with numbers and it doesn't make any sense. So what you take as a starting point when you're balancing these crafts, creating art, is the language. And the language is what makes each medium unique. Like you can tell that in cinema that is capturing the flow of time. In photography it might be capturing these unique seconds in all the details you have. In drama or theater that can be characters and how the characters are evolving. And today we will be trying to do two things. We will be trying to find what is unique about games and how we can define this language. And then we will talk about how we can actually utilize that in production and development to make better games. So again, the important point to remember about the language This is what helps you do better, and this is what makes the game unique. Like, you can notice that you have films like Avengers, for example, and they're not done like films, not always. They're done like products, and it feels like a set of disciplines combined together. You also can have games done like that. The point here is to make game like a game, film like a film, and whatever face collaboratively. Not trying to steal from us a medium, but trying to adapt to the language of the medium we're using. So, important point, games are interactive, and they're the only thing which is actually true interactive. Because yes, we do have Black Mirror, it's an interactive cinema, blah blah blah, but we do have a lot of films which are not interactive, and they still have the language, and they're still art within the cinematic medium. Games are always interactive. A game does not happen when nobody plays it. The game does not exist when nobody plays it. Your game, as a work of art, will exist only if somebody plays it through, and we always want people to play it through long enough. That happens when we're talking about retention, that happens when we have something we want to tell players, some important thought we want to deliver, and we know that, for example, if we have a narrative game divided into 3 acts, we need people to play at least through the first act to actually get what we're trying to say. So again, games are interactive, and if we go deeper, then we can define the language of games as a set of actions your player chooses to do. What this means, and it also means not choosing to do something. Again, we create a set of motivations, we create systems which force people, which make people or motivate people to do something, or to decline doing that as well, depending on the consequences. And if we go deeper in that, wait a second more. The mouse is, yes. So here, we can have an action cycle. This is basically generically how your actions are working in the games. You kind of start with the motivation, but the most important part is what player actually does. So yeah, motivation defines why your player wants to do that. Can your player actually do that? Is it possible? Is it hard? Is it hard enough to try? Is it too hard to actually try? And then your player decides to do something or not to do something, and this is the action happening. And every action has consequences, which is the outcome. And the outcome actually drives emotions, and emotions drive new motivations. Because, again, you wanted to kill a boss, and again, you went to the dungeon, you fucked it up, you crawled back, you're angry, out of resources, and you need to go back and gain resources again, for example, to progress, or you want to beat the ass of this boss, or you have a friend who actually did it, and you're afraid your friend mocks you because you couldn't. These are all emotions which trigger the motivation to go to the dungeon again. And if we look at that through the game cycle perspective, then we have 2 things. Player fantasy, which is basically the experience your player wants to live through. This is how you sell your game. And the second one is in-game systems you have, which make this experience available. So you have the fantasy, then you have the systems which allegedly let your players live through that experience. They trigger motivations, but the most important part, again, is action. And we have a lot of questions as game designers when we're designing anything. Like, the most popular one is, what do we want the players to feel? What emotions do we want to trigger? But that's the wrong question. We need to ask ourselves what we want them to do, how they should behave so that this player fantasy actually happens, and then how it makes them feel. If we just ask ourselves like how we want them to feel, we have too many options to achieve that, and this is when we get conflict of disciplines. Because our people will say, we'll just design a beautiful location, and everybody will feel spooky for the Halloween. Sound people will tell you that, we'll just do really nice sound like Hellblade did or The Last of Us, and we will be fine. Programmer people will tell you, no, we will do really nice rendering and lighting, and everybody will be cool, and everybody will be amazed with the graphics in the game, and the quality we can achieve in a given year, and we will be fine, or we can just generate everything using procedures, and we will be having tons of levels. And suddenly, we have lots of examples in the industry why this does not work. Because the question should be what the player should do, and how the player should be doing that, should be able to do that. How many options do you have? I mean, probably everybody in this room already tried Baldur's Gate, so they give you options. They give you too many options, they make it feel real, and this is why it works. It doesn't work because they have nice graphic or because Astarion is a talkable bitch. It works because you have a lot of options and you have choice. So if we look at games this way, when we have four mediums, art, narrative, design, and tech, we can take any game from hyper-casual to AAA and kind of slice it to see what's what. You have level design mix between design and art, you have characters, environment art, you can cinematics, whatever, between narrative and art. You can have a lot of tools that help you make it happen. You can have monetization, again, you can have mechanics. All of these intersect at Player Fantasy and Games Group, which again are answering the question what the player should do. And if we go to direction, as we told before, we have crafts, and crafts are basically hard skills of your team. Like, how good is your team at creating art assets? How good are your programmers? Can they actually do this fast? Can they optimize that? Are they skilled enough? What can your designers do? Do you have enough sound people, or are you outsourcing that? Do you have enough storytelling? Do you want storytelling? Are you capable of doing that? Do you have enough people to create the content you need? All of these are crafts, and all of these you do use for product management and project management. But how you do this, you create things that drive people to act. That's it. It doesn't mean how cool your art looks if your art doesn't move people to actually play the game. It doesn't matter how greatly written your narrative is if your story mechanism doesn't drive people to actually want to live through this narrative and go through and progress and uncover more. You can have a nicely written book on paper by a narrative design team, but then you put it to the game and it doesn't work because people do not want to uncover more. Again, this makes it better because instead of having conflicts in the team, depending on who does what, and who knows better, and who has more experience in the industry, and who has experience with similar cases, you have a simple goal. You have the direction of what people should do, and each discipline answers how it can be achieved in the better way. And sometimes they always intersect, but you don't have conflicts anymore, because it's not about artists making art, it's not about programmers writing code, it's about making people act. So it's not a competition, and the third thing that you have player choice. People tend not to like to choose things. People are, like, we all are tired of our lives, we're tired of immigration, we're tired of complicated cases, so whenever I don't need to choose what to eat, I would prefer not to, if I know I will be pleased. This is why casual things work, because people don't want to think, they want to have fun. But people do love choice, and people do love safe choice and fake choice as well. And sometimes people do like hard choices in games because it's safe, it's not in real life. You can kill somebody, you can fuck it up, you can have a lot of emotions about it, but it's not real, and you know it, and you know that you will feel depressed for one day, maybe a week. I was in love with the gaming character for 2 weeks once. That happens, but then you will go live your life, but you will still have the experience that kind of changed you. So, first rule, the main rule, we have show don't tell in cinema or comics. We have let them act in games, and sometimes we're making them to act. We put them into the conditions when acting is less hurting than non-acting, for example. We make them go through, and we give them motivation to want. And this is the example of how you can take 3D skills like art, design, and narrative, for example, and ask yourself questions during the development of how you can utilize this fantasy of making players act. So, for example, you have design, and you say, what actions actually form the fantasy? Like, I want to make a game about a person with a really giant sword, roaming around mountains of Kazbegi and killing wolves, whatever. How can I do that? How can I create a set of actions so that the person knows it's Kazbegi, not other mountains, the person knows that his sword is gigantic, the person knows that he is supposed to kill wolves. How can I do this? You create the list of actions, and then you create the list of outcomes each action can provide and one. And then you create connections between actions. Like, again, simple example, if we're still talking about swords and beating people up, you usually have a really short, fast way to move the sword, and then slower but dealing more damage. This is the choice. These are the two actions you can give the player, and then the connection between them, and then the trade-off between them. Then you have the stamina, and the long shot takes more stamina, the short one takes less. Again, this is connections, and this is the trade-off. You can have actions which are being narratively judged, like you have a person who really likes wolves in your team as a character, and if you go killing wolves with this person, they will be probably disappointed and they might leave you. So if you want them, probably just kill wolves without them, and that's also the choice. All of these, the tiny little choices, and you can forget about them. Like, as I said, for example, when I say you have a character in your party, that already means that you have a mechanic of having a party. If you have an option to leave this character out of the party, that's also the action. So you list all of them, and it's a hard exercise, but then you have a list of actions, you have outcomes, and you have connections. Then, if you look at that regard, you ask yourself how we can present that, and how we can motivate people to do it. A nice example of that would be in Horizon, in their art direction, whenever you see these things on the rocks that help you climb, they're yellow, out of nowhere. You have no idea why, like you get the explanation from narrative, but later on in the game, they actually does look a bit out of place, but they're yellow, and the only emotion as the player you have, when you see them, oh shit, I'm not lost, and I know that I can climb here. Great! That might be not really good from our direction perspective, but it works, and it kind of gives you a sense of, you can climb here, and you can see what's going on. Same, glowing things, or things covered in dark that kind of stimulate your curiosity. Whatever you can do, a system of UX highlighting some objects in red and some objects in purple. This is how you present the actions. This is how you can communicate that, oh, you know what, you can touch this, but this is dangerous, probably because it's red. Or you can touch that, and that's yellow, but it gives you less rewards. So again, you have the list of action, and you run each of them and all the outcomes through art, trying to create the system on this level. Like, you have a list of trade-offs, you have a list of connections. Do they have something in common? Can we say that we have a bunch of negative effects, a bunch of positive effects, a bunch of neutral effects? Okay, we already have 3. Do we need more? How we can create a color-coded system for that? How we can create a location that shows you, like, go here, not there. Usually, like in AAA, for example, we have a big forest, you will have a road. And you know from your life experience that usually you use the road to go somewhere. So yes, you can roam around in the bushes, pretending that you're on a queer party, but you have the road, and the road leads somewhere, and you want to know where. So you go on the road. This is how you use art. And then you have the narrative. And the narrative basically explains things. Like, yes, you have a cool set of actions that defines your gameplay, but why? Why are you capable of doing that? Say, again, Baldur's Gate, you can read people's minds. Why? Because you have a worm in your head. And that defines why you can do that. Why you have a sword? Because you are a rogue gladiator who broke up from Colosseum and now roams around. Why you can, I don't know, why are you a werewolf? Because somebody beaten you and now you need to live this life. Narrative defines the set of actions you have. And narrative also explains the outcomes. Because sometimes, balance-wise, from the game design perspective, we will need to make some outcomes really hard on the players to actually drive them towards a particular gameplay we want them to relieve. Like, Darkest Dungeon doesn't care about your comfort, Darkest Dungeon makes you feel pain. You will never succeed in this game, nothing will ever be alright. This is a game about balancing it, so it's like not that painful, but still painful. And we have narrative in Darkest Dungeon defined that it's not going to be good ever, because this is a really dark place. And this is why, as a player, you do not question yourself, you do not question, is it fair? Because narrative gives you the frame within each, it is fair, even though in any other game with different narrative, it might be not. So you do all this, you create systems, you prototype, then you have a set of systems that simulate your motivation, and through iterative prototyping, you actually create the core gameplay systems for the game. And then, you go to money. I promise you I wouldn't talk about that, but I like it. So, any activity your player takes in the game, whether it's free to play or buy to play title they need to pay for in advance, every activity they take is an activity. As you stimulate them to do something within the game, as you give them the game to try during an open weekend on Steam, whatever you do, this is the same mechanism. You want them to commit an action of paying you. Okay, how you can do that? Again, all the mediums you have, how you can make them play for customization. I don't know, maybe create a really nice pre-battle and post-battle preview so they can see other people's customization and want to be cool. How do you want them to pay for your game? I don't know. Do you have an IP? Can you promote it? No. Do you have a community within the game that you can promote it for? No? Okay. Maybe the free weekend on Steam is your choice because you can give them the game to touch, you can present it on conferences, you can do showcasing, and then people will actually want to pay for that. So any payment activity is the same as killing wolves or grinding or crafting or romancing characters in your game. It's the same, just connected with money, so people might need a little bit more motivation than just the fun. Again, depending on what you will pay for, you might deliver the new experience. And that actually is true. Like, even if you take casual match 3 game and people are buying extra turns, this is new experience because they were struggling with the levels. They were spending days to pass one level. It's like, so they tries to pass a hard one. Okay, but when you give them these extra turns, suddenly they're good and they can progress faster, they can get the storyline, they get another level of experience, and they're willing to pay you again. They're in Fortnite and they buy a cool skin of Uchiha Itachi, for example, or Naruto, and they show up with their friends and they're doing it on Twitch, and they have screenshots, recordings, they use that as a meme within their friend community. That's another experience you're selling, and that's also an action. That's the new experience they can gain, except one you give them for free. And good thing, if you have people who are engaged with the features you offer, whether they are free or paid, this is retention. And we all need retention to actually have monetization because if nobody plays, nobody pays. Wait a second. So, another thing on marketing, basically, as I said, you're selling the player fantasies, which means that you are selling an experience. And if you are doing this through the game language, you should not be just selling existing within the fantasy, you're selling being the fantasy. Like, we had a really nice marketing campaign for Cyberpunk, even though it sucks as a game, but marketing was big, and they were selling a fantasy of living in the night city, of being able to do lots of cool things, of being able to hang out with Keanu Reeves, whatever that was. They were selling a fantasy of doing actions. Same as Baldur's Gate, fantasy of romancing everybody, doing whatever you want, using the dungeon system, using the D&D to make the experience happen. Okay, you make a pixel art narrative noir game, will show off and sell the experience of going through the plots, being detective, being noir, having kind of unexpected endings. All of these, don't just sell emotions, sell actions they can do, and let these actions drive them. If you can showcase, that's even better. It's like, we all had a blast a couple of years ago when mobile publishers discovered that they can do playable ads. It was a disaster of some sorts because they started doing playable ads which have no way to be connected with the original gameplay of the game, and that sucks. But it boosted the market so much. So again, if you're selling the game, sell the game, don't sell the film, don't sell the cinematics, don't sell the graphics. We've been there, we've done that for each and every new generation of consoles. We've been there as an industry. Hopefully, we're growing out of that because right now we have engines which are compatible with everything. We have Unreal, we have a lot of easier ways to create games. So stop selling your cinematics, stop selling your optimization, and sell the actual actions people can do in your game. And also, through these actions, let players know who they are. Like, again, years ago, we had Assassin's Creed, and everybody was like, you can jump from a fucking tower? That's great! This was selling the game for me. I was, what, 8, 9 when they first came out? And I was like, yeah, okay, if I can jump from the tower, I probably will do that. Remember everybody playing GTA San Andreas and saying, you can do everything. You can drop, you can drive a police car, you can kill policemen. Wow, that's cool. Again, that's actions. That's not just the setting of being a gangster. That's not the fantasy of that. That's concrete actions you do. So, if we summarize that, nerdy talk I gave you, the first thing to do is to actually acknowledge that you can make great games in summer disciplines. You can find a team of talented artist, programmer, and game designer, and these three will create a really nice game, and you can sell it as a product. But if you want to do this like art, this is not enough, and you need to remember about language. Communicating with players, you communicate through actions. You can try other things. You can use narrative, you can just throw a bunch of text in people, and if people are really willing to play, they will suffer and it will be good, but again, not good enough. You need to give players options, you need to give them choice, and you need to remember about the language whenever you have the conflict. Whenever you have the conflict, whenever your game designer says that they're the queen of the room, they're not, because you have other disciplines. Whenever your disciplines try to argue with game designer because they know better or they just want to create beautiful art, you can ask them why. Because it all should be interactions, it shouldn't be just randomly because they're talented and they can do so. And time for questions.